Got to do the countdown.
This is definitely, what I'm saying, your show. But I know you got a co-host too.
Yeah, I got a co-host. It's a young kid out of Atlanta, brilliant kid.
Yeah.
We have a lot of opposing views, but
Yeah.
he's a smart individual. So it's like half the time we disagree on certain things, and we find that compromise.
That's
And
good
that's
though. It brings the dynamic in the show.
yeah, it really does because it highlights his abilities and mine, and then we just kind of bring it together. And so, young kid named James Williams. Yeah, he actually goes to school uh, for economics. Is it economics or is it? I want to say it's political science. There it is, political science. Had a little brain
Gotcha.
fart just now. So, anytime I talk about the stuff that I bring up, he first time I met this kid, man, was in the parking lot. One of my homeboys introduced us, and we just started talking about politics like that, and economics and like the economy and everything. We just went off. So
Hey man, that's how it be when you get two enlightened minds. They're just folks who really care, really want to have a conversation about what happened. So,
yeah,
yeah, feel free to edit him in however you want if he wants to be there. I'm really big on keeping brands consistent and giving everybody a chance to stay in the mix. So just let
yeah,
me know if there's something we need to like. Oh, yo, you'd have something dope to say.
yeah, yeah. I
So
actually, he always got something dope to say.
yeah, yeah. So just exactly if you think it makes sense, to have him chime in or like we'll have our conversation right. You can figure out ways to edit him in to just like provide like some political fact or some economic fact or whatever. I think that'd be a dope little add-in because he couldn't be here live for the conversation.
Yeah, he might be sometimes like be a little camera shy. Most of the time, he wants to have the interaction as far as
Yeah.
doing a solo because he has a lot of shows or a lot of episodes that he wants to partake in, but he doesn't want to be in front of the camera. He just wants to be the behind the scenes guy.
The
As a matter
audio.
of fact, I hit him up whenever I didn't get a chance to really look through everything. I was like, "Yo, look at the bill, give me some
Uh-huh.
pointers, give me some things that you think I should cover." So
Yeah.
he
Okay.
is legit my writer. That dude is employed. He don't got a big
Yeah.
salary yet,
Yeah.
but he is employed.
Nah, that's what's up. Like, yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, I mean, don't feel as if I'm restricting you or I'm too worried about what you do with it. You know what I'm saying? So, just let me know, and I will be flexible. So if like I say something and then you like pause or whatever, and we got it so the editor can do their thing, I'm cool with it. So,
Where
or,
yeah,
or you can say it, like don't even pause and just say it live, and I'll be like, yeah, I wonder what he's gonna say. I look forward to catching it on the episode. Like it's whatever.
yeah.
So, yeah.
It's
Well,
better. It's
let's
always
get to
better
it.
raw in a way. It's always better raw. And we actually came up with some topics that I'm gonna make sure I discuss. So I got some notes.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, I'm here. I'm ready to go. Let's shoot for 30 minutes.
that sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the first question. Well, first of all, let's dial it back. We're gonna discuss the body infrastructure bill, and we're gonna talk about why is it important to even care what's in this bill? Why should anybody take the time to read it? What's the importance of the everyday average human being, and in our aspect, in our perception, being African American men, what's the importance to African American people in America? There's a lot of things that we kind of just don't take part in because we feel like it's not cool, it's not cultural, it's not the way that we want to be. But I feel like a lot of that is a conditioning that we have accepted that we probably shouldn't have accepted.
For sure. So I mean, first, I'd like to say this thing is just getting rolled out. So this bill, this plan, and right now, what I really like that I'm seeing is the media attention. And I'm actually pretty critical or critique the media a lot about coverage, specifically of engineering, civil engineering. I'm a civil engineer. And this time, I feel like because of the amount of money that's getting rolled out, people are chatting a little bit.
Oh
It's getting a
yeah.
little spicy. It's getting fun. It is also at a really hard time. We've got a lot of trials going on that should be done, should have never happened. It should have been, wrap this up. We already know it's on camera. Let's get out of here. But it is what it is. We're not going to go there right now. But I'd also like to highlight, the concept you talked about, black people being conditioned. So, for me and my family, politics is something that we do talk about. We do think it's cool to be in the know, right? But you do have to engage with facts. You have to make sure that you're having a fruitful conversation. You're not just coming and making up things, and you're actually talking about how we can leverage resources from the government. But I do know a lot of my homies, right, or even the students. I'm a professor at Virginia Tech, aren't as interested in politics, specifically the engineering students. They think, okay, that's the social side of things. I'm here to just build the bridge. I'm here to, make it stand still or whatever. And they're not really interested. They like to wait until the money rolls to them. And so I teach an infrastructure policy class to let them know, hey, this is how you can start predicting the future a little bit, right? You can see where your career is going to go because of legislation, but it also helps you influence where we're going to go, right? Too many times, some of these policy decisions are being made by people who don't have engineering backgrounds or don't have the cultural backgrounds of the communities that are being most impacted. And going again back to the black community, right? So again, sometimes you think about it not being cool, but there's also the problem of us not being invited. So I think some of that conditioning came from, if you're a grown man and you feel like you don't have any say, you back off a little bit, and you and your homies, what I like to call shuck and jive a little bit, right? And act like you don't care, but in reality you do. It hurts. It hurts that you don't have control over what your neighborhood is going to look like. But we're not that far from desegregation and civil rights. The civil rights movement, from what people like to call it, that timeline, I still think is going on. And I think that's where a lot of that conditioning comes from. So
To your
briefly,
point,
yeah.
actually, so the conditioning part is actually more than that, or more that than the cultural it's not cool aspect of
Yeah.
that thought is the conditioning. I mean, I'm learning things at 30 that I was like, yo, I wish I'd have known this
Game
years
changer.
ago. You know what I mean? And I also heard someone say something along the lines of, most people who are involved in government, who are involved in, politics, they are people who have something to gain, people who have something to fight
Absolutely.
for,
Or lose.
usually, or lose, right? So they're interested in what government is doing. A lot of well, I ain't gonna say a lot, but a good portion of the African American community, they feel like they don't have anything to lose. So that's where that whole, politics isn't really important kind of energy comes from. It's like, okay, well, once you start owning property, once you start getting business, once you start actually getting involved economically, that's when you realize, oh snap, I need to care what this Republican, Democrat, or this senator or this congressman, I need to care what they're passing because it's going to affect me. Other than those who are in business, who are actually involved in the infrastructure and how it operates, most people aren't going to really care about what politicians are doing until they're giving out stimulus checks, until they're giving out free money or free health care or etc.
Yeah, I was going to get to the point specifically of agency, right? So, what do you think you can do, right? So, if I engage, if I listen, if I read this news article, right, or if I read this bill, or if I go to the town hall meeting, what actually is going to happen, right? What changes from me being engaged in this process? And for far too long, Black folks have honestly been ignored, marginalized, excluded, or even listened to, and then their thoughts and their suggestions have been weaponized, right? They find out what you care about, and then they destroy it.
They exploit it too. Exploit
yeah,
it, destroy it,
100%.
use it, abuse it. I mean, we could go on. We really could.
So yeah, I mean, I think this is a really special one again because of how much has occurred in our society, and also looking globally, right? COVID-19 showed some really large vulnerabilities in the American infrastructure, specifically health infrastructure. But also now just thinking about traveling, right? So many people are extremely afraid to get on an airplane. And they should be, right? Dr. Fauci says even though he's got vaccinated, he's going to wait a little longer to get on airplanes, right? Even though many experts have shown that the filtration systems in airplanes make it so that, you can definitely fly and be safe. Potentially, we're still figuring it out.
I mean, I think it was American Airlines that said that they were not going to take the CDC's recommendation and actually spread the seating. So I think I read an article about that a couple days ago, and it popped up on my Google feed. So I was like, okay, and I'm flying American Airlines, I think, soon. I don't know if it's American Airlines. I don't know which airline, but there was definitely an article that said that one of the airlines is going to not take the CDC's recommendation to separate seating. So
That's wild. Yeah, I haven't been on a plane since this thing started. I was on a plane when it started, so it became a national emergency. I was flying from conference to a conference in Arizona, and yeah, I mean, I saw people masked up. I was really, worried about folks. I didn't have my mask yet because it was literally getting kicked off while I was, flying. So yeah, it's really interesting to see. Luckily, I didn't get COVID-19 then, and I've been safe up to this point. But yeah, it's just interesting to see who's following what guidelines and who's taking advantage of what resources, and that's why I think this bill is so important to engage with and influence, because we can start thinking about what resources would you like to see the U.S. federal government invest in to improve your quality of life, right? What kind of infrastructure do you need to make your life better? So the point I was getting to was I really like traveling via train. So when I go to Europe, I really enjoy how many trains, specifically Switzerland. I mean, oh my goodness.
Beautiful trains over there, boy.
Beautiful trains, and also talking about Swiss timing, right? The stuff's on time. When I'm in DC and I'm waiting on the train, I'm like, when is this thing coming?
They might be like 5-7 minute delay, 20-minute delay, train shut down, all kinds of stuff. It happens, right?
It's super interesting how it goes. Yeah, I mean, I ain't gonna say it doesn't happen, but it definitely was timely when I was there, and I'm really looking forward to America improving their infrastructure for freight, because I mean, right now with COVID-19, you could think you could have a train that maybe it wasn't a high speed train that could have some windows open, right, and have a lot of fresh air ventilation, which we definitely can't do to the same extent when you're in a pressurized cabin in in the air. So even just also airports, right? If you look at a train's infrastructure when you're going to get on a train, a lot of times it's an open area that you board the train, where airports a lot different. You have to go through this very closed off small space. And yeah, I'm really hoping that we can get to that point and really improve our transportation infrastructure.
As a matter of fact, do you think that the next generation, and this is kind of maybe, I'm not gonna say it's a dumb question, but it's an out there question. Do you think that the next generation will be able to sustain the infrastructure that Biden is trying to pass, that he's trying to encourage?
I mean, he's got an interesting plan because there's so much. This is a lot.
Yeah, it'll take a while to grasp it all. It really will.
Yeah. Trillions of dollars, and ASCE, American Society of Civil Engineers, has been calling for this large investment. If you look at our report card, we've been saying this for, and I'm a member, years, that we need to invest. So one thing I do like about this plan is that it does bring a lot of things together, specifically talking about workforce development. And if you look at American history, but also just history of society in general, building infrastructure has always been a part, or many times has been a part of giving people opportunities to learn skills and feed their families, and just provide actual services. So one thing that really frustrates me right now, especially being at home and cut off my cable, so everything's kind of on YouTube or Hulu and all that type of stuff, right?
Streaming it all, right?
Streaming, right? So I get very specific and targeted ads because they have the infrastructure now to see what I'm searching for. And since I'm a business owner, I search for a lot of business related things. So my ads are business targeted. And I always get those ads about passive income and how it's so important to make
every single time becoming a millionaire. I'm not mad, don't get me wrong, but every single time, man.
It's so frustrating to see the amount of advertising. I really worry about the next generation who's getting this advertising about making money by doing nothing, right? Make passive money. Like, don't be there's only 24 hours in a day, and it's to me, I don't like these advertisements specifically because it doesn't talk about the value you put into the system. So I know you had that episode about capitalism versus socialism, right? And I'm not going to go there with you right now, right? Because that's you had that episode and they did their thing. But no matter what, I think if you're exchanging goods and resources and time and energy, you should be contributing value to society. If you want to be valued, you should be contributing value to society. That's
I heard
just
it. I heard it said that the number one reason or the number one road to success is if you offer something that people need or want.
and to me, I'm not going to try to put labels on it and say that you need to go build things or whatever. Sometimes just making somebody laugh, right? Or entertain and feel good, right? There's so many different ways to provide value. And an interesting debate I pose in classes when I guest lecture is affordable housing a right? And it's so interesting to hear specifically the next generation of engineers, because mostly I'm guest lecturing for engineering classes, talk about their perceptions about how people need to do something at a certain level to be able to afford housing. And to me, it's really interesting. I can argue it either way, right? But at the same time, it's in a country that has such a bad housing problem, and I'm a housing scholar. I think it's really interesting to see the amount of vacant housing we have, the luxury housing we have, and just the immense amount of excess we have in regards to housing.
Wow.
But still, so many people go without adequate housing, which was also really, really shown with the COVID-19 pandemic because of the limited access to broadband, which is also in the Biden plan, which is very important.
They was passing that. I saw that. And I work in an industry where I go to a lot of the outskirts and people don't have broadband. They don't have it. And it's like, man, now I got to charge them more for a more expensive system because they don't have this, it's crazy. And that's pretty important. That's really important.
They can't take advantage of the infrastructure. That's the key here, right? It's like how your life changes by the infrastructure you have around you. And so many times we can see it very clearly when we talk about education. You want to move to a place that has very good schools, right? Because you don't want to have to pay for private school, or even if you're willing and have the money to pay for private school, there has to be a private school there, right? And so many other times we just overlook it for the other necessities of life. I think education is extremely important, hence me being a professor. But I also think clean water is very important. I think electricity and other sources of energy are very important.
Have you ever went without clean water to your knowledge?
Yeah. I actually have. So I've been in places where there wasn't clean water, and it's a completely different lifestyle, right? And
most people wouldn't think that is something that people actually, struggle with, or they experience that. Like clean water, we think that our system, which is ranked 13th in the world, I think, in certain areas, that we're not going to have these issues like clean water. Like, no, there's some places that are having issues with clean water. Hence, Michigan. They still don't got it, right?
All right. So I'm going to say they don't have it because they don't have adequate infrastructure at this point, right? Now, the argument is definitely more complex, right? Were we talking about all of Flint, every single resident, or are we talking about the majority? Where's our threshold, right? And that's another interesting part about this infrastructure plan is the numbers. Like the whole idea of 100% broadband access is a very interesting mark that we want to make, a target. Same thing with I'm a sustainability scholar, right? When people talk about net zero or carbon neutral by a certain year, right? How we get to some of these things and get to a certain level of them is extremely complex. And I had the honor of working with Jeannie Purchase and Mark Edwards here at Virginia Tech, and they're part of the Flint water study team, and they've done incredible work. But not only just Flint, I know you're in South Carolina, so Denmark, South Carolina, not that far from you, has a water crisis, right?
Denmark? What? I didn't know there was a Denmark, South Carolina that existed.
Yeah.
I need to get aware of my geographical location.
Yeah, it's kind of in the middle. I believe it's near Orangeburg or so, maybe 30 or so minutes. Benedict. You ever heard of Benedict College?
Yeah.
Yeah, that area of the state. Newark, New Jersey has a lot of water issues, right? Right next to New York City.
Wow.
Very
population might have a big role in that,
So it's just, but I mean, again, when you have, I truly believe in, the Fred Hampton way of thinking about power, right? Power's in the people.
Power's in the people. Wherever there's people, there's power. Well, that's my boy right there.
So there's a big debate, and getting back to this infrastructure plan, right? There's a big debate about cities. And should we be able to create these huge, massive cities, right, in urban areas that are very hard to develop infrastructure for? Or, should we be spread out, and what's going to be more sustainable, and all of that type of stuff. And again, when you have enough people, you can think through and figure out how to develop the right solutions. Now, the one thing we cannot do, though, is to continue living the way we live. We cannot
absolutely not.
Like, we cannot exploit infrastructure. There's just, efficiency is efficiency, right? We can, unless we get this everlasting renewable source. We got the sun, right? If the sun goes away, then of course Earth is going to have a problem. All of us are going to have a problem. But even then,
the entire universe is going to have a problem.
The materials that go into developing a solar panel or any type of system that can capture the energy from the sun takes resources, right? And for me, where we're currently at with technology, I think is very important with what Biden's saying. He wants to do is invest in clean energy jobs. And yes, if we can have more people and subsidize the cost that it takes to develop some of these technologies, that's going to help out a lot, right? And you've seen it. We call it like social innovation or technology adoption curves. And you look at basically over time, when everyone starts to get one, or you start making something as a mass production product, the cost of it goes down. And I've loved seeing the cost of solar panels go down, but it still needs to go down even more. And also the education around people installing them so that it doesn't cost you much to get installed. The education around green mortgages so that people know they can roll these type of technologies into their mortgages so they can have a more sustainable home. Most of these mortgages are 15 or 30-year mortgages, right? Many people can afford, can basically roll solar panels into their mortgage right now. Look at the tax incentives, and the rate of return is going to be before they pay off their mortgage. So it's actually a really good deal, as long as you're not going to hop out of your crib really soon. But again, you have to know, and you have to be offered these services.
The resources. I always say on EconRevolt that resources are just as important as the education that we receive, that we strive to get. So, not having the resources can really make or break the goal that you're trying to accomplish.
Exactly.
But since we're on the education, and this can go for public schools, colleges, the whole 9 yards. What 3 main adjustments would you make to the current public school system?
So in the Biden plan, you said 3, right?
Yeah.
We ain't gonna scratch the surface with 3, bro. But
we're gonna try. We're gonna try to put a little notch on it.
We're going to try. All right. So let's bring it home. So let's start high schools, right? We went to the same high school. That's where we met.
Yep.
And so I had the opportunity to take AutoCAD in high school. Did you get a chance to do that?
Nope.
All right, so I believe that's because Coach Cox, shout out Coach Cox.
You were smarter than me, though. So
Nah.
You are smarter.
Nah, that ain't what it is, bro. You already know your creativity and spatialization skills are off the charts. And you definitely could have went a beast in AutoCAD, but I believe you were there while Coach Cox was serving in the military.
Yes.
So a lot of people, my brother had known Coach Cox because he's older than both of us, right? And he had known about him, so he got in, and then we had the substitute. And shout out to the substitute. I won't say his name because we're not really tight like that, but it wasn't the same. So I started with the substitute, and then when Coach Cox got here, I got it. I got the hype that everybody was telling me about why it was so important to take this class and learn the real life skills. Substitute did a really good job of kind of bringing us through the mechanics of drawing, but he wasn't teaching us the professional skills. Like, he wasn't showing us how to get a job as a drafter or how to get a job as an architect or an engineer. When Coach Cox got engaged, like, that's what he was talking about, whether it be specifically locally or going to school, how we could position ourselves to go to college. He was definitely instrumental in me going to Clemson University. But also just really figuring out, what is your trade going to be? What is your craft going to be? And how can you master that? How can you engage with people who have mastered that? So we did like actual projects in that class where we would design stuff for the school. So one of my first, major projects in the class was developing the fire emergency plan. Because we had a rough one that wasn't updated. They did it when they were still developing the school because, we went to a school that was pretty brand new.
Yeah.
And he had me go through and actually update it and make sure that, the rooms that were supposed to be closets were actually still closets, or were they actually storage rooms, or were they actually like little offices? What were they? And we measured things out because in the case of emergency, you want that plan to be correct. And you also want to make sure you're mapping out the most efficient way out or way in. And that was a pretty dope project and let me know like the importance of getting a career in emergency management. And now I actually coach, I advise students who are getting PhDs in civil engineering, focusing on emergency management type of studies. And like, it's so cool to kind of make these connections.
You wear a lot of hats, bro.
Bro, I wear way too many hats, man.
You wear a lot of hats, bro.
Much
respect,
shout out
too. Much respect.
Listen, shout out New Era. I want a sponsorship. Let me get one of those. And because I'm gonna need one. All this stress, I see my hairline going back just a little bit more.
Man. G, say it ain't so, G.
So whatever is gone, what I'm saying? I'm not rocking hats that much until, the hair is gone, but I'm trying to enjoy it as much as I can. But yeah,
right.
Definitely a lot of hats. But, the cool thing again, though, is being exposed to that at an early age made me look at the world in a different way. So to answer your question directly about, what can we change the public schools, right? So I think professional education opportunities. So our school had cosmetology, we had AutoCAD, we had business and finance, we had web design, which that's where I got nice with coding in that web design class. I mean, we had so many professional skills classes at that school. And I know a lot of high schools don't have that, right? And even now, our high school is struggling to maintain all of these programs, right? And get investment, especially after now they're not new anymore, and trying to figure out how do you get the community to support and fund these initiatives. The second thing I would say is actually, rezoning, like figuring out who goes where and what kind of choices people get and balancing things out. It is 100% known at this point that we've been very, very racist where we've allowed people to live and how we've moved people, specifically the Black community.
May I add something real quick to that?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I grew up in a town called Lower South Carolina.
Yeah,
the education system there is known; it's not the best.
Yeah.
And for me to have to compete with someone who goes to a public school that is far more advanced than Lora's in the education system, and this just happens year after year after year. It's baffling. So it's like, how am I supposed to compete on the education level for a scholarship, for, just opportunities if, I'm not getting the proper education? So to that point, man, I mean, and luckily, and I this is, I want to be careful how I say this. I was blessed to be able to go to a school like St. James High School, who was a little bit, more advanced in education. They were pursuing those, but, I'm not saying Loris High School is not, but it could be a lot more done, for sure.
100%. And, again, like figuring out how we share these resources. We had teacher cadets. So I got a chance to take get college credit for an education course and actually go to middle schools and teach it, which made me really well positioned when I came into wanting to be a college professor. Most people don't know college professors actually don't get trained on teaching, but I had already got trained, and I had, took many classes in engineering and science education at Clemson as a part of my PhD program because I kind of knew I wanted to be in education for sure. So again, thinking about location, who gets to go where. I mean, thinking about, moving up, let's move up a rank right now to colleges, right? And community colleges, that whole state-based focus around where you can go. I mean, honestly, Clemson was cool, but I didn't want to be in the South that much anymore. I definitely dealt with racism enough. I dealt with lack of opportunity enough. Being raised in New York, which definitely has racism as well.
Passive,
but I knew
and aggressive.
the opportunities I was getting in New York as an elementary school student was what people were getting in middle school in South Carolina. And I was like, man, I definitely want to make that happen. Cornell was really interested in me. Long story short, because I was at St. James and the guidance counselors or school counselors we only had one Black school counselor. And, she was super dope, but I wasn't assigned to her. And
neither was I.
Before I was working with the Black guidance counselor, school counselor, my application wasn't looking that great. After I started working with her, things looked a
Of
whole lot better.
course.
But the timing was off though, because I had got her. I worked with her later. I didn't take SAT subject test, which automatically disqualified me from going to Cornell. And that was just something that really reminded me the importance of having community, having appropriate representation, having people who walked in your footsteps and understand the experience you're going through. And like folks who've been able to, see the path that you're
See
on.
where you're trying to go, right? Like, it's very important to see, right? Like, I'm currently getting into real estate investment.
Yeah.
Real estate investment is always something I wanted to do, but I never really got to see it happen. And now that I actually got to see it before my eyes, I'm in the game.
Yeah, it's like, but also it's important to make sure you recognize, especially if folks who are trying to teach you, right? If someone's trying to teach you and they don't understand where you're coming from, it's very hard for them to give you a direction in which way to go. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Make sure you get that right. If someone doesn't understand where you're coming from, they can give you great advice about where your target is, but it's very hard for them to tell you what direction your target is in, because everybody's not on the same coordinate plane. Basically highlighting that somebody could be telling you to go north when actually you need to be going south. It's like just knowing that she understood that I wasn't in the know about SAT subject tests. I wasn't in the know about the type of competition that was required to get into an Ivy League school. I wasn't fully understanding what I was challenging myself with when it came to going to the next level and going to a top tier university. And I think that's another really important problem that I wanted to highlight is, what does it mean to be a top tier school versus a non-top tier school? Why do we have any non-top tier schools is my point. In America, right, we have enough resources to make something to make something as important as education always be gold standard, right? Point blank period. So that third thing,
And that's not happening everywhere. That's not
no.
actually, that's not even close. And we get it. It can't be perfect across the board, but it has to be some level of pursuit towards the perfectness, and that's not happening.
I'm not even saying perfect though. Just my point is like that gold standard, right? So when you think about what the gold standard is, set off of like gold, something that's precious, something that's valuable, shiny, and beautiful, right?
Something
All
that's
of our
valuable.
schools, valuable, right? All of our schools should be special, shiny, beautiful, and valuable, right? I'm not saying every school needs to have some ridiculously expensive infrastructure or some type of fancy and flashy thing. But what I am saying is that people, specifically, let's talk about the corridor of shame, right? That should have never happened. We should not have had students going to schools with holes in the roof in the building envelope. We should have never had essentially people having to ride very long rides just to get to school. We should have never had people with inadequate and very old age textbooks or lack of access to a computer during the era when we had computers, right? It's just very, very, very lackluster in so many different locations and regions, and we can afford to fix that. So the third thing I wanted to get into really quick, just because I know we got a long episode already, and viewers, just I care about you. I hope you're being entertained right now. I hope you feel like you're learning and you can have a conversation. Hit them comments below. I know my guy will definitely reach out to you. I'm gonna try to pay attention to him too and reach back. I got a YouTube account too. I'm not popping like my man right here.
Go ahead,
like
shout it out though. Go ahead, shout it out though, man.
It's Freddy's Focus on all platforms, or Freddy Paige on all platforms. But I'm definitely gonna get in there and talk to y'all. But that third thing is, what you were leading towards is what our targets are. Our targets should not be based around standardized tests. Get that out of here. Like we know it's not working. We know that the education scholars have picked these things apart so many different times, specifically for being racist, right? Let's focus on creating better targets about what an effective school is, and let's create better incentives and better structures for supporting the people who are doing amazing work teachers and other school faculty and staff, and make sure that we're investing in our future appropriately. But even if you don't want to talk about the future, invest in the community members right next to you. If you can look at a youth
Community.
if you could look at somebody who's youthful and like just trying to learn, and just think about yourself when you were just trying to learn and how tough it was just to spend that time and energy to expand your brain, right? And not have any love for that and not try to incentivize that. I mean, you need some help. You know what I'm saying? And you definitely need to do some soul healing, because it's such a beautiful thing, and
It's a
we
lot
need
of
to
soul
invest
healing.
in that.
To your point, and I want to ask you another thing. This probably be the anchor here. So
Yeah.
you know, as African American people, right? When we're seeing this new America that Biden is trying to, or new and improved America that Biden is trying to implement, you know, how do we receive that, especially while in the midst of fighting racism, while in the midst of rehabilitating, because rehabilitation is so important. Like, we're trying to fight racism and we're also trying to rehabilitate at the same time. And it's like, we don't know which one to do first, right? Personally, I'm going to say rehabilitate. And you know, I think maybe you will agree as well, because, you know,
Absolutely.
if you're hurt, you're sick, you know, it's hard to fight. So rehabilitate, you know, figure out what it is that's going to help you heal your brothers, heal your sisters, heal people next to you. And then if you have to fight racism, which you will, you fight it on the back end. But the question is, you know, in your eyes, in your view, as a professor, you know, because we didn't highlight that in the beginning. How do you know, the hurt people, the sick people receive this new plan, and how are they going to try to implement it? Because there's going to be a lot thrown at us at one time. It truly is.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, just first of all, give that disclaimer. You know, I am a professor, but my views do not represent the university. That's one cool thing about being professors. I can kind of distance myself. Like, I work for a very large entity or corporation, but I am my own individual, right? So I like academic freedom. I think it's a beautiful thing, and we need to continue to protect that and make it even better. But getting to your point, right? The folks who have been most impacted, I'm going to specifically talk about the Black community, right? And I like Sandy Darity. We definitely don't have the same exact viewpoints or whatever, but I really admire and respect what he's been able to do with his time as a scholar and his time as a Black man in this world that has definitely put him through a lot of adversity. Really go out on a ledge and talk about things. I feel like he could be much more radical, but again, just talk about things such as reparations, right? Have you ever been in a conversation with somebody who has access to the money, like the actual money of the government or a large community fund, who you know could actually pay into your community who's been robbed, right? And look them in the eyes and say, you should pay. And not only should you pay, it's not going to be enough. After you pay, we're not going to say thank you, we need some more. I think that's pretty special. So first of all, rehabilitation, I think we need to rehabilitate the home. And I'm a housing scholar, I'm biased. I really grew up in some situations where my housing wasn't as adequate as it should be. Shout out to my moms for doing everything that she could.
Shout out to mine too. I got to do that.
You know what I'm saying?
Mom's bust her butt, man. I mean,
you know,
oh man, it was tough.
Roof over the head. But you know, growing up in South Carolina, I don't know if you ever stayed in a mobile home, but I did.
I've stayed in mobile homes, hotels, everything, bro. I'm telling you.
So in the summer, that mobile home basically turns into like a little hot box. You know what I'm saying? It's just so hot. And then in the winter, it's so cold. You know what I'm saying? It's just
even at the beach. Even at the beach, it's still cold.
Even at the beach. So it's just ridiculous how that HUD code is so bare minimum and how those are considered to be adequate housing. Now, they've come a long way since we've been kids.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, shout out to the companies who are really going above and beyond code to provide better than substandard housing. But the whole concept of like it being adequate is ridiculous, and really making sure that we have affordable housing. So now I know President Biden and his team has definitely talked about the need to rehabilitate and provide more affordable housing. But we have so many buildings already. Like, we have built so much infrastructure already. And I was in Seattle, and that's where this picture comes from that you see behind me. I talked about the homelessness problem in Seattle. And I'm like looking at it and I'm like, empty homes everywhere. The homeless just sitting stuck. Life's a rut. And I'm like, if I didn't have a home to keep me warm and a family to come around me, and I'm sitting there on the street looking at this vacation property on a regular basis all the time, or looking at all this commercial property for lease, or all of these other things that are just sitting there warm, very accessible, so usable, but people aren't using it because someone's not paying enough money, that'd be very
That's where
problematic.
capitalism has been placed over people.
So for me, that's where I would start specifically, is making sure that people have a safe place to call home, something that's very adequate, something that fills their soul and allows them to rest. Because I feel like we have a lot of troubled people who never get a chance to actually rest, specifically because where we rest in our community is in our homes. Right, to the point we've gotten so bad with infrastructure that people, and you can look this up. Actually, I want you to look this up. People started designing city bench or park benches and things like that so that they would be uncomfortable for homeless people or those who are without a home to sit down and lay down, right? And I'm like, that is insane.
Yeah.
You spend extra brain power to do that instead of spending the time and brain power and energy to give them a place to go. It's ridiculous to me. So
it's a cop out.
That's to the point. Well, it's not even just a cop out. It's a direct attack on people.
And to that point, the projects. I mean, we can go a long way with this, but I'm gonna keep it brief. The projects. It's not a home. You know what I mean? It's home for those who are there, but when you talk about that, that home feel, the projects is a trap.
Well, it depends on which one you at though, because
from what I've seen,
have some projects.
From what I've seen here in South Carolina.
South Carolina. I mean, I'm trying to get back there and do some more work because it is pretty ridiculous. And then the wait list, the wait list just to get Section 8 housing is ridiculous in South Carolina. But I mean, the point is specifically when you think about like the crime, right? When you think about all these things that occur in the project, right? First of all, these things occur all over the place. And sometimes the media spins it as if it is this very particular problem in the black and brown
location,
communities.
right?
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? And then the things that occur there many times have been incentivized or, fueled by other mechanisms outside of the people, right? If you put people in a place and every job is super far away from them, and then you inject certain substances and certain things into the community that they could get off and make profit from, you're going to have a problem. And that's completely by design, right? If you bring certain cultures together and mash them together and they don't necessarily mesh and they don't feel like there's a community between them, then there's going to be some problems, right? Hence this color versus that color, right? You know what I'm saying? All of these things have been developed by having poor infrastructure and by basically systemic processes that make people want to have war, right? And when you think about the things that occur in some of these communities, if you just look at them and take them out of that context and put them into another context, then they're ethical fights for freedom.
Come on now.
So again, for me, I would love to see Section 8 housing get improved, invested in more. I do work with affordable housing providers, specifically here in Virginia, that do an incredible job. Like you would drive through and you wouldn't even know it was affordable housing. And a lot of it is also mixed use, where people who make much more money than their neighbors live in that community and don't even know it because the community is set up in a way where everyone has access and opportunity. And we all know the way that people get incentivized or get paid is definitely rigged. So it's like, it's not that you're better or you're at a higher class than someone else because of some reason other than the game and the system. So rehabilitating our housing and making communities, having places that have community centers, you know what I'm saying? People who can work in those centers. I used to think it was ridiculous in South Carolina, the spacing of the community centers and then the lack of staffing in the community centers. The people who worked in the community center were great, but they had like 8 jobs. So it's like, can we give them a break? Can we make it so that, you know what I'm saying, they have more resources? Can there be a bus that gets you here and there? Or can we actually, revolutionary idea, can we have a sidewalk from the community to the rec center so that people could actually...
So they don't have to walk on the side of the road. I mean, It's that simple.
It's that simple, man. And yeah, I understand it's expensive, especially in a place that's spread out like South Carolina, Myrtle Beach specifically. Grand Strand is extremely large. Horry County is extremely large, extremely diverse. But if we spread the money around and we invest in the right ways, I definitely think a lot of change can occur and people can live much better. Everyone can live much better.
Well, that's what EconRevolt wants to also pursue and push and encourage, is that when they start spreading those funds, we make the most use out of it. We don't want it to go to waste. I mean, we don't got too many chances to mess up anymore. It's about time to go ahead and start seeing progress and get rid of some of these old ideals and some of these old traditions that aren't helping the economy, that aren't helping the communities. So that when them finances come, we need to be ready.
For sure, people need to be ready, and the systems need to be ready. Like it shouldn't be something that's very complicated or very difficult to get access to resources. It shouldn't be hidden. It shouldn't be based on things and criteria that are unfair. And it should be incentivized and brought right to people where they are. You know, somebody should be in your community that's well versed with whatever system it is or whatever process it is that you need. And, you know, I believe, and I'm very connected to my African roots. And I talk to my African family, and they talk about the chief and, you know, specifically having these resources. When you have excess, you bring it to the center, and then they share it out and make sure that everybody has what they need. Or if you go, you know, borrow from your neighbor, it's not like weird. They're not looking at you like, oh, why do you need this? Or, you know, why can't you just go get your own?
Right.
It's like, hey, we share these things.
Yeah. That's the only part of tribal that we don't get. Everything else is tribal. That's the only part of tribal that we don't get. Like, if you're going to be tribal, then you need to make sure that you got every bit of tribal in there. And tribalness, to me, is you share with your brother and your sister, you share with your neighbor, and you don't look down upon them whenever you do that. And then when they do the same to you, they don't do that either. They don't look down upon you either.
Exactly.
But, all right, economists, 'cause that's what I always call the viewers of the show. We had the pleasure of having Freddy Focus on here. He gave us some real game. He gave us some real knowledge. Please follow up on what he does. This guy is a true community builder. He's a true advocate for people. All people, but mostly our African American people, obviously, because right now we need it the most. And if you don't feel that way, that's fine. But we do, so it's all good. So
I appreciate you.
Yo, man. Make sure they get one more shout out to where they can follow you and check out your music, check out everything that you're doing in your community up there in Virginia. You know, let them know what's up.
Yeah. So Freddy's Focus on most platforms, if not all platforms, or Freddy Paige, that's FreddyPaige. And for Freddy's Focus, that's FreddyS as in Samuel, Focus, Focus. And I mean, I just love making music. So please check that out. If you can, buy it. If you can, share it. If you can, like it. If you can, subscribe. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you want to do, hit me up. I definitely hit people back. And I make the music for the people. Same thing as I do the engineering thing for the people. That's why I'm a civil engineer. I believe in building community infrastructure and sustainable infrastructure, but specifically my goal is to make regenerative infrastructure. So I want to make things and systems or help contribute to systems that get better over time. Not just flatline, but get better over time.
My man.
So that's what I'm out here for. That's why I'm so invested in the youth. That's why I'm so invested in my brothers in my community. And I appreciate y'all for viewing, and hit us up.
Hey, until next time, if you don't get it, you don't got it.
Peace.